So we're going to try to do something a little bit different. This is a data visualization conference, but I'm not going to be speaking about data visualization at all. In fact, I'm going to use information graphics and information design to visualize concepts about omnichannel experience development. How many of you are familiar with user experience design or experience design? Can I get a show of hands? Okay, that's a lot of you. You'll notice that I didn't use the word design at all to explain or to describe the creation or conceptualization of experience. And that's intentional. I think the word design is pretty problematic. It focuses attention on, what you can see, what the eye sees in terms of the experience of applications. And as we know, with interactive and in the world of digital, what you can see is only a very small subset of experience, right? There are other things that are just as important, like how the UI or the experience responds when a user engages with it, interacts with that user experience, the transition of the UI from screen to screen. All of these things are equally as important as the look and feel of the UI. And so, are any of you user experience designers yourselves? Anyone? Great. So I have empathy for you. It's a hard job, okay? We have a lot on our plate. It's an athletic discipline that isn't just about design, and that's why, that term is kind of one of my pet peeves. It bugs me a little bit. It irks me a little bit. But I will fall back and use that term in the vocabulary of this presentation to keep things simple. But if you go home tonight or tomorrow and you go to work and you see your user experience designer there, give them a great big hug because they have a really tough job. And guess what? Our jobs got a lot tougher in the last couple of years. We live in a fundamentally different world than we did a couple of years ago, as I'm sure you're aware. Our discipline actually needs a complete overhaul. We used to have a pretty rock-hard process for developing single-screen, single-channel experiences. We had a user-centered design methodology to do that. We had a formula, it was a recipe, it was a blueprint, and it worked pretty well for the desktop-centric world that we used to live in. But as you know, things got more complex with the explosion of multi-device ownership. And you'll hear contemporary UX practitioners describe the user journey. And that is a journey from context of engagement to context of engagement, from touch point to touch point, from device to device, and from phase of engagement with a business to phase of engagement. So this presentation attempts to be a quick start guide for the contemporary UX designer as we develop that omni-channel digital strategy and experience design. But let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm Jonathan Lupo. I'm the head of experience design for EPAM, formerly the co-founder of Empathy Lab. I don't know if you've heard of us. We were a small digital strategy and experience firm based out of Philadelphia. We've since been acquired by EPAM Global, which is a very large public engineering firm, an outsourced development firm of 9,000 plus engineers in Eastern Europe, in the Ukraine, in Belarus, in Hungary. And they acquired us to be a part, to introduce digital strategy and experience design because they knew this was critical to their current clients. So now I have a global user experience design team. We have folks in the United States and in Canada, in New York and Philly, and after I designed this presentation, we're opening up in LA. So little plug, if you know any experienced designers or you're looking for work, we're hiring. Thanks for giving me that little plug. But we also have a team of really talented, experienced designers in Minsk, in Budapest, in the Ukraine. And experience design is an umbrella discipline for the three sub-disciplines of user experience design, visual design, and content strategy. They all fall under the umbrella of experience design. Okay? Let's get started. So our mission, I just talked about how complex the development of experience really is, but our mission is deceptively simple in that we have two objectives, okay? Goal number one is to make it easy for the end users of the applications we develop, just make it easy for them to complete their key tasks, right? Capture their minds. But we also want to make it a joy to do so. With an engaging experience that they'll want to return to again and again. You know, they won't want to delete that application off their phone after they install it. It's not just about usability. In fact, you know, the user experience discipline used to be called usability engineering, information architecture. Let's see, you know, it used to focus primarily on making the user interface usable, frictionless, which is great, but sometimes that led to making it devoid of any soul or lack the, you know, fulfillment of the value proposition of the brands of the applications that we were designing for. And of course, you know, these things changed all that. It put the experience into the palm of your hand and made it such an engaging, frictionless, intuitive, simple, and beautiful thing that now the spotlight is on experience design. It's a trending topic on Twitter. It's a hashtag, and you know, it got a lot more sexy, and actually making experiences motivational and eliciting an emotional response, making them evocative, is a really important aspect to what we do. The trick is, how do we do it? So I'm going to walk you through that contemporary process to develop a user-centered but also omni-channel digital strategy. Does anyone know the difference between multi-channel and omni-channel? Anyone want to shout out what they think that might be? Go ahead. Oh, okay. Well, so the difference between a multi-channel or multi-device experience, a mirrored experience, an experience that's accessible across devices, and an omni-channel one is data, actually. So this ties in nicely with the theme of this conference. An experience that understands through data where the user is, physically, location-wise, as well as where they are in a phase of engagement in the life cycle of a business, allows that experience to be contextually relevant across devices, no matter whether they're, you know, at home on their laptops, you know, they're on the go with their phones, or they're at work on a desktop. You log in, there's a profile about you, and that experience can change, can morph, can be relevant to you according to your context. That's a true omni-channel experience, and a good example of that is, you know, this Kindle ecosystem where I could read a book on my Kindle, start on my tablet, you know, pick it up on my phone, it knows where I left off. That's a seamless user journey, and that's an intelligent one, it's a data-driven one. And that's the difference between an omni-channel experience and a mirrored multi-channel one. That makes sense to you guys. Okay? Now, let's talk about the key to developing intuitive and engaging experiences. Okay? For all you UX practitioners out there, what really separates the big guns from the wannabes in our discipline? There's a lot of people on Twitter claiming to be UX experts, but you know, really what separates the real user experience practitioners from the wannabes is the practice of understanding end user behavior by conducting qualitative contextual research. understanding behavior in the context of the engagement of users with brands is what separates an actual practitioner of design from someone who's, largely guessing. Sure, you can be an interaction designer, right? And you get your list of requirements from a product owner. So you have these business requirements, but really, are they founded in the needs, are they grounded in the needs of the end user based on, investigation, based on a true understanding of the needs of that end user? You see, you can't expect that customers or consumers or end users of applications are experts in your business. They don't understand your lingo, your jargon for your business. They don't know about your political, organizational structure or hierarchy. And so why would you think that recreating that internal system and taxonomy would be usable for someone who comes to an experience with their own agenda, with their own intent, with their own needs and behaviors? You can't. And so the only way to understand and design appropriately for them is through behavioral research. So let's move on and take a look at what are the key dimensions of behavior that real UX practitioners need to know. Okay? Number one, intent. Intent is the mental model. Intent is the set of reasons why an end user downloads that application or visits that website. You need to understand that mental model before you can make a usable application. Number two, motivation, okay? Motivation is the magic. It's the experience that captures her heart, that resonates with her lifestyle. It compels her to revisit the site and prevents her from deleting that app that you just took a year to design from her phone, okay? Number three, tasks. Tasks are the key behaviors that the application user interface and the main navigation seeks to intuitively facilitate, okay? Tasks are the expression of intent and the result of intent. Let's talk about context. Context is what separates the big guns from the wannabes because it's often overlooked. Context is the location of the user. Where is she? Is she at home? Is she at work? Is she on the go? Or is she somewhere else in a store? How many of you have heard about this emerging consumer behavior called showrooming? Have you heard of showrooming? Would anyone care to explain that behavior? Right, and it's a real problem, right? Because if you're a retailer, you've got the customer in your store and they're on their phone comparison shopping and evaluating your physical product, using your real estate, but not making a purchase there because they're looking at competitive pricing elsewhere and making that leaving your store without you getting the sale. So do you see how important context and understanding behavior in the context of a physical location is to designing an appropriate interface? It's very important. It's critical. And it's often overlooked. Here's why. Because of lab-based research, okay? There's no way to understand user behavior and needs, motivation, in the context of an engagement with a brand if you're conducting research in a laboratory, okay, or a focus group, right? You're just having this unfamiliar setting. You're putting a user research participant in a very in a room with sometimes a one-way mirror in an intimidating situation. You're giving them a laptop or a computer that they've never used before. They haven't configured or customized to meet their own needs, and you're asking them to be natural about how they would typically behave when they're in a store on their phone, it's a series of problems and bias that really doesn't help you capture those magic moments when you're in the field in an ethnographic sense, conducting contextual inquiry. Contextual inquiry is a research technique that we practice as UX practitioners where, you know, we conduct these interviews, but in the context of the engagement with the brand. So this could be in the user's home while she's on her laptop shopping for product, or it can be on the go, with a sales rep as she's detailing a physician. It could be in a store as she's shopping for a physical good. Contextual inquiry is a more effective way to capture the needs, motivations, and tasks of the end user in the context of engagement with brands. So let's kind of zoom into intent, which I described as the mental model, right? This is the reason why the user has visited the website or downloaded that application. It's what is the user intending to do? What key tasks is that end user intending to do on that website? It's the key to that first objective in our mission of making that system, that experience, easy to use, frictionless, by understanding how they get from point A to point B to point C. Okay. The only way to do this is through contextual inquiry and to document the task flow of the end user. Here's a typical scenario, okay? You're conducting research, let's say, in an employee's cubicle or in her office, in front of her own computer, and you have your line of questioning, and this is kind of how it goes. You would ask her, do you recall the last time you logged into the knowledge portal? And she might say, yeah, I logged in yesterday. And you would follow up then, do you remember what you were doing what you were looking for when you were using the knowledge portal yesterday? She might say, yeah, I remember. I wanted to find some research about one of my clients. So this is a critical moment in the research interview, UX designers, because you just captured her intent. You know what tasks she was intending to complete using your application. Now complete the mission and ask her to recreate that task in front of you. See, it's a two-step process. Step one in understanding behavior is understanding the intent of behavior through recall, not speculation. So we would never ask in a research interview, what do you think you would do on a knowledge portal? You say, what did you do the last time you logged in? That focuses her brain on recalling the last time she went to the system. Step two is asking her to recreate that action in front of you in the context of her typical daily engagement with that application, okay? So you say, great. Could you show me what you did yesterday when you were looking for research? Please demonstrate using your computer. Okay. At this point, it's easy. All you're doing is capturing her actions. It's observing what she's doing step by step. She logs in. She navigates to the section where the document related to her client is. She may fumble, and you note that because that's where you're isolating usability issues in the UI. But she's showing you her process flow, her task flow, and it's your job then to model a more efficient one for her. That's making an application usable by understanding behavior and tasks. But this is how we document those tasks, is through the creation of behavioral personas. And a big question that I get asked a lot and is a point of confusion with clients is, we have personas. Our marketing department came up with them. Here they are. And so we look at them, and they're really demographic personas. They're based on marketing segmentation, which has nothing to do necessarily, is influential, but has nothing to do with behavior. They're all based on demographic information. What we do as UX practitioners is take that demographic segmentation, take those marketing personas, and use them as recruitment criteria for our research, okay? Because we know the business is targeting those groups, those segments. Those segments are important because they're the target audience for the services and the products that our clients provide. However, they're not actionable as a design document. When we're optimizing user interfaces according to behavior, we need to understand what the unique trends in behavior are through behavioral segmentation, behavioral personas. So we look for trends, as I mentioned, and we create these behavioral profiles that are dimensionalized in the following ways: key attributes, motivations, and tasks. What are the key tasks of these key segments, these behavioral segments? Okay, that's great. But let's focus in on the tasks for a moment, because behavioral persona are not actionable design documents in of themselves. As I said, UX design is an athletic discipline. We got a lot to do. So what we do is we take those behavioral personas, we zoom in on the key tasks of each of those key archetypes, and we create task models, mental models, whereby we take each of those key segments, each of those key personas, aggregate all of the key tasks from each of those personas, and then it's our job to develop or identify content to satisfy each of those key tasks for each of those key segments. It's a systematic process, okay? And sometimes a business may have content, it may exist already to satisfy the needs of these personae, but sometimes they may not, and that's good, because that's a gap where you can develop new content to satisfy tasks that you observed in research. And you wouldn't have arrived at those gaps had you just guessed, right? You observed the task flow, you observed those key tasks, now you know the business has an opportunity to satisfy something, a need. Let's talk a little bit about motivation, okay? As I said, motivation is the magic. You just learned how to create usable applications, software, basically. And if you stop there, you've got software, okay? You've got frictionless software. How do you make that experience more engaging, more compelling? That software may be usable, but it may not be used. It may not be adopted because it's not motivational. It doesn't evoke any emotional response. It doesn't fulfill on that unique value proposition of the brand for the business that you're designing the application for. And this is science, folks. This isn't just me spouting off stuff. There's this famous neurologist and leading Parkinson's disease researcher. His name is Donald Calm. And he states that reason leads to conclusions while emotion leads to actions. It's very true. You may have a very logical construct, a very logical system that you designed, and no one may ever use it because they're not emotionally incented to use that experience. And the overused example of Apple proves it, okay? We have these really simple and engaging experiences that fulfill on the value proposition of that company, and it's powerful. It's adopted. Great design creates emotional bonds with brands. It isn't just fluff. It's necessary. Okay, let's pause here. All the information that you just learned about the UX process, it may have been, enough to make you a great UX designer 5 years ago. But as you know, things got really complex lately. We used to design one screen at a time. That user journey was really a short trip. Now it's an actual journey across screens and touch points and contexts of use and engagement cycles. And so we need a contemporary blueprint for our jobs. We need to overhaul this UX process. I'll explain. I keep saying it. The world has changed in the last 5 years. Here's how. I don't know if I really need to explain this to you. Mobile is huge, duh. Okay, we'll check that box and move on, okay? At the end of the year, or sometime this year, there's dispute in the data. Mobile will be the dominant internet platform, eclipsing desktop. We all know that. It's this stat right here that keeps user experience practitioners awake at night and in a sweat. Multi-device ownership is real, okay? So in the US alone, nearly 1 in 4, US smartphone users also owns a tablet, okay? What does that mean? Well, it means there's ambiguity, right? You can never know where a user is going to, what device a user is going to use to access your products and services. You just can't know. It's not something that you can predict anymore. You can look at your analytics and see where they're coming from. Historically, how recent is that data, I would question, and what is the trend upwards and the adoption of these other devices, TVs, smart TVs, clicking on a link from Twitter. You don't know where they're coming from is the point. So content access needs to be ubiquitous, right? If you're a business playing in the world of digital today, you have to deliver your products and services and your information across every device, okay? It's not a question anymore. You can't have an Android strategy and an iPhone strategy. You need a content strategy that's omnichannel, that's multi-channel and omnichannel. It's just the way you do business today, digitally. Now, as I explained before, that doesn't mean you have the same experience on every screen, okay? Much like responsive design, are any of you familiar with responsive web design and the pros and cons of that? Look, you need that, okay? If you have a website that's basically a marketing bulletin board for your company, it better be optimized for every screen. And that broadsword that you have, your company website, better be responsive. It's got to be optimized for every screen. Otherwise, you don't look credible, okay? But you also need, native applications for specific purposes and specific use cases unique to the context of engagement with your business, okay? That's being omnichannel. Understanding that the experience needs to change according to what we know about you, what the application knows about you through your journey. Now, we talked a lot about physical location, right? And context is more than if we know you're at home, on your tablet, or at work, on your desktop, or on the go, on your mobile device. Context is so much more than that now, okay? Let's talk about context as far as where you are, where the user is within this life cycle, within this cycle of engagement with brands, okay? Every business has a life cycle. Every industry, every vertical has a life cycle of engagement, and it's a blueprint. That life cycle is kind of your Rosetta Stone for developing a 360-degree digital strategy. It's really important. And UX designers who are worth their salt understand how to dimensionalize a business. This is what I mean. Let's take a look at one basic example, e-commerce. I've been talking about different e-commerce use cases. E-commerce can be kind of dimensionalized in a basic way in 4 stages, okay? There's this product discovery where an e-commerce business is making products discoverable through SEO, through merchandising tactics online. But it's the first phase of their digital strategy, to understand how to develop and conceptualize features to help the end user discover their products and services. They move on to a shopping phase. We talked about showrooming, okay? How do you make it easy for the online shopper to compare products or to evaluate products? It's your reviews and ratings and, price comparisons. All of those tactics are conceptualized in that phase. We move on to checkout, right? And, I don't know if any of you UX practitioners have worked on e-commerce sites, but this is where most of your clients pay particular attention, because it's about driving conversion. It's about increasing purchase opportunities. It's about increasing average order size. You may have heard of these KPIs, key performance indicators. But really, it's about incorporating best practices in the cart and optimizing those conversion points. So you see, it's a different set of digital tactics in that phase. And we move on to loyalty, which is all about reward. It's about turning the one-time shopper into a frequent shopper, the one-time engager into an evangelizer of the store, the online store. It's about rewarding loyalty. You've heard the term gamification, another buzzwordy trending topic, hashtag on Twitter. How do you incent engagement? That's what we're talking about with this phase, and that's a very unique set of tactics. So as you can see, you can model a 360-degree consumer strategy for e-commerce by simply dimensionalizing e-commerce as a business and creating a blueprint. That's what we do nowadays. And those tactics for each of those phases span all touch points. So they span desktop, they span tablet, they span mobile, they span social. And so understanding by conducting research within these phases of engagement will enable you to develop, conceptualize, and design tactics appropriately for the end user at each phase. So that's a lot for us to do. And as I mentioned, every business has one of these things, these life cycles. Take travel and hospitality, phase one. Inspire the end user to want to travel. Produce these beautiful images of Hawaii and beaches and sand and sun. Get them, whet their appetite for travel. Then move them on to planning their trip quickly. Make it easy and frictionless for them to plan and customize with filters and tools and options. Then make it frictionless. This is the cart for travel, is the booking, the online booking phase. Make it frictionless for them to convert. Allow them to save their itinerary. This is where mobile comes into play, right? Because you're away from your desktop computer. You just landed in Hawaii. You're all excited, and you forgot kind of what you have to do. So you want an app, or you want a way to pull up that itinerary again easily using your device. So really, you have to connect these dots. You have to connect this journey, and then reward them. Travel and hospitality businesses are famous for their rewards programs. So they pay particular attention to that phase of their engagement. And so on. I'm not going to walk through the healthcare, patient care life cycle of experiencing symptoms, seeking diagnosis, getting treatment, maintaining wellness. If you work in that industry, you're intimately familiar with that cycle of engagement. But do you kind of understand and see how each business and each industry has a 360-degree engagement cycle? And if you're consulting with a client as a user experience practitioner, and you're able to map this out, and there may be some unique elements to it for your client, your customer, you're going to be poised well to deliver a 360-degree strategy, especially if you understand what the end user's needs are at each of these phases. Imagine how powerful that is. That's your Rosetta Stone. So let's recap. How do we create a 360-degree strategy? An omnichannel strategy leverages digital to support the needs of the end user throughout phases of engagement with brands across touch points. In a nutshell, that's contemporary user experience design, right there. So we develop tactics to support phases of the business life cycle. Again, discovery. We may have social discovery, local discovery, personalization, SEO, and you see how all of those tactics lend themselves to different contexts, to different devices and different touch points, to, scarcity deals, flash sales, product comparisons, reviews and ratings, interactive demos to make products more sexy, to driving conversion and best practices, free shipping, and all those great tactics that we can conceptualize with our clients to convert to rewards, frequent purchases, rewards, reward engagements, gamify shopping, offer member benefits. So that's a lot. Okay. Well, you present this shopping list of tactics to your client, and they're looking at their budgets and saying, okay, well, first of all, we have a budget for mobile. We have a budget for desktop. We have a budget for social, maybe. And guess what? We can't support reviews and ratings. We don't have a platform to deliver customer reviews or ratings, or we haven't even, we have no critical mass of user ratings and reviews. We can't deploy all of these tactics at once. That's good, actually, that's okay. So let's talk about this shift in user experience design from a web, desktop-centric, long-haul redesign process to a product development methodology where you've mapped out a roadmap of features over the course of several years and you prioritize, okay? So what I'm going to talk about now is how to identify an MVP candidate. Are any of you familiar with the MVP phrase? MVP is kind of this agile-like term for minimum viable product, okay? And the way EPAM Empathy Lab describes it as the features that provide the highest value to your business, the highest value to your users, your customers, and are technically feasible given your current technology stack, okay? Those features, we could say, would make a really solid first release of this product, okay? And it's good. It's great that we have things that we didn't do. We didn't boil the ocean or whatever cliche you want to use there. Because that gives us a runway, gives us a ramp. It gives the business a roadmap to constantly deploy new features to enhance the experience for those users continuously. We don't have to pool these new features into a large redesign that we deploy a year later, right? We can continuously deploy new enhancements. It's an app store model. So, your app gets that little, if you're on iOS, you get the little badge that says, okay, we got an update in the App Store. This is the same concept. I mean, it's exciting, right? Apple made that exciting for me, for a user who's downloaded an application to suddenly see, oh, wow, there's new features. Great. I just tap it. I get to the App Store. I download it again. Let's take that same approach with whatever we're doing with our clients, including their websites. Let's constantly deploy new features by having this roadmap and prioritization of MVP. Quick summary. I mean, I've said it over and over again. Conducting research is the key to understand intent, tasks, and motivations. Gain that deep understanding of end user needs. Dimensionalize the business in terms of its engagement cycle with consumers to understand needs at each phase. Conceptualize tactics to support the end user at each phase of engagement across devices and touch points. And then prioritize an initial release and subsequent releases based on value to business, value to user, and technical feasibility. And that's it. Thank you. Are there any questions? Sure. Thank you. Yes. Did I make you sick? Okay, good, good. Great. I do too.
I'm curious what, just as a case study, I'm curious what your view of the user experience on Amazon is.
Okay, that's a tricky one. So I believe that it's a beautiful experience in terms of its ability to be ubiquitous, access from, their ability to deliver the same service across touch points is great. Their ability to understand through data what drives purchases and how to recommend products is great. I've had, personally, I have some issue with the information architecture. I think sometimes it's difficult. There's a lot going on. It's a marketplace, right? Sometimes it gets a little busy for me personally. But I think, let's talk about its adoption, right? It's, through the roof. So they're doing something right. They're being true to their brand. They're providing a useful experience. They've got, and it's largely driven, I think, their popularity by the amount of content that they have. They are a marketplace. You can pretty much find whatever you're looking for there. So I may want to suffer through a painful user experience to eventually find what I'm looking for at the right price. So they've got the right features to support me while I'm shopping. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my point of view about Amazon. Anyone else? Sure. Thank you. Yeah. So we have a service called eLab, and eLab is a requirements gathering workshop, right? Where we don't just go in cold. A lot of client kickoffs, if you've ever worked at an agency or a consultancy, some people actually walk in with no knowledge of the business and attempt to draw requirements out by talking about tactics, just to your point. What we try to do is do a little bit of upfront research. We do some guerrilla user research, on our own dime when we kick off with clients. We'll talk to 5 or 10 people, and we'll do secondary research on their industry and come up with, one of those provisional blueprints, those provisional life cycles of engagement, and we'll guide the discussion about tactics through the context, through the lens of that engagement cycle. And we'll try to really focus the discussion by bucketing their features and tactics to those phases. And they have a laundry list of features already guaranteed. And so it's a matter of taking them, embracing them, and just organizing them into that cycle for them. And that really focuses them on their roadmap. Any other questions? Time up. One more?
Do you have any good techniques on new companies of identifying people to interview? You have 2,500 customers.
Right.
Yeah, it seems to point you in one direction, and that might be interesting on what it's probably slanted.
Yeah.
When you're trying to look for, bring things onto different devices and things like that, is there any 2 or 3 bullet points you can tell me on how to identify customers that are using the product, on PC or something?
Sure. We use Google AdWords sometimes, so we can kind of intercept an end user, a potential research participant in the act of engaging with our client's brand by kind of launching these Google ads in the sidebar that are triggered. They can be geolocated, geo-targeted, and keyword targeted based on, client branded keywords. So we know they're customers. We know they're looking for products and services online because they're Googling, and then they're responding to those ads, which take them through a screening survey, and we can set up times to meet with them. So that's one way. Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.